So, welcome to the BECC Advisory Podcast, and the topic of the day is consultancy and practice with Borough Donuts. So, my name is Conlon Riley. As you can see, I'm the team leader and designer for this project.
My name is Ben Ray and I've been the researcher for this project.
I'm Callum Akhtar, I'm the content writer for this project.
I'm Eugene, the floater of the team. So I'll be explaining the content page in a very brief way. We will start with creating our CV, the applications of 7Cs, the brief back questions that we asked Emmy, identifying Borough Donuts, oops, spoiler alert, that's our client, and also SWOT analysis and PESTEL. Passing on to Callum.
Our target audience analysis is someone who we are going to be looking into a lot, looking at other donut cities such as Berlin and Amsterdam. Our business model canvas, Entrecomp, such as a pie chart as a group and as individual. 15 Dewey Weeds aspects of everyday life, again as a pie chart as a team and individual. And how we keep track of our task and weekly post updates.
We will also be looking at the theories we learnt and how we applied them, such as three-legged stools and the S-curve tool. We will also be looking at our team review, and we will see how we struggled a little bit up to week 7 and how we improved it by week 9. We will also look at the client presentation and how we actually presented it at the end. And lastly, the reflection of the final presentation and the reflection of a whole, both as a group and individually.
Yeah, so starting off with me, so we were asked to create a CV for our client so they could get a bit to know us. So we've done this in a format which shows our strengths and weaknesses to the client, which is showing open and honesty. So starting off with me, I'd say a strength of myself is I've got experience in marketing and digital marketing specifically and graphic design. I'd say the weaknesses is sometimes in long projects like this I could lose lack of focus. And sometimes I can become really fast-paced. And passing on to Ben.
Yeah, so one of my strengths was a semi-professional footballer, which means I have a lot of contacts. But a weakness I had throughout this project was public speaking, which could have affected me the final presentation. Passing it on to Callum now.
So my strengths would be I'm good in theories. I love economics. I'm sociable. I'm good at knowing how the client wants to be talked to. So if it's in a calm way, if it's in a detailed way. I'd say my weaknesses are I'm overly detail oriented. I could take criticism too, personally, but I mean no one's perfect. And could get confused on what the person is asking if I'm struggling to know all the details about them. Passing on to Eugene.
Yep, so one of my strengths that I'm going to address here is actually I can speak 3 languages fluently. So it was because we was just wondering if the clients are from a different demographic altogether. And one of the weakness I have is too focused in the task, and sometimes I will neglect the voice. So I apologize if there's any.
It's that way.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you can see, we had a discussion of who our preferred client would be, and we came up with we all want to do Borough Donut. We were also interested on the impact of generative AI on quality education, and also Nightlight. But in the end, we all agreed on Borough Donut.
Yeah. So this is the 7Cs. How we apply the 7Cs framework was actually because when we learned about them, we realized that there was 7 of them, and we are a team of 4, and we decided that we should actually break them up into see who's better at which specific Cs. And also some of the questions that we have to rephrase specifically just for Borough Donuts as a client, and also to filter up which are the questions that are relevant or irrelevant, so that we would then get the best information out of our client itself.
So as you can see from the client here, the question we identified was who is the real client and what is their level of buy-in to the proposed project. And as someone who attended the meeting, I'm going to pass it on to Conlon to speak about what the buy-in is to this project.
Yeah, so me and Callum attended a meeting right at the start, which was with Borough Donuts. And I felt like it was identified, obviously the buy-in is actually the volunteers itself, because the volunteers need to buy in to what the client is trying to do. So obviously for the proposed project, the buy-in will be the volunteers, with the client needing more volunteers. and passing over to Callum. Callum will speak more about the clarify stage.
Yeah, so I think in the clarify stage there would be quite a few issues. Ben, you obviously had a lot more to talk about, didn't you?
Yeah, so as a researcher, I was looking at the reason for the current situation, and Flo Eugene actually helped me to identify a problem which we found together could potentially be in their website. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think we realized was the donation page. Remember, we were trying.
Yeah.
I think I was like trying to say, guys, could you try the donation page because it was like broken, so it could potentially lose potential donors or like sponsorships as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the create element, there was a few questions as well, but I identified a key question of being, is there anything we cannot do? So it was a question that we would ask the client, because we needed to understand specifically more for me as a team leader and a graphic designer, if there's anything throughout this project we couldn't do. So it could be something as simple as we have to use certain colours or certain wording in our project. So obviously it was a key question that we needed to make sure we asked. And then following on to the change section, which closely links into it, is do you have a standard engagement deployment process that will have to be followed? And following on to Ben, if you would like to...
Yeah, I think something that was important for us as a group for that question was the fact that we like to be very creative in stuff we've done before. So we just wanted to make sure that we could put our creative element out there, but also following what they expect from us.
Yeah.
So we're just going to moving on now. Callum, do you have anything to add to that? Or do you want to talk about confirm?
I'd like to talk about confirm. So, we used quantitative and qualitative measures. The quantitative, what we initially thought of is they want a lot more volunteers, but then we started talking quite a lot about the qualitative side, making sure even if it's not as much, it's going to be a lot better than serve more stuff. Going on to continue.
Yeah.
So the question that we identified for continue was, is there anyone who will try to eradicate the change once it is complete? And Eugene, do you want to touch up on that?
Yeah, so I think it's because we all knew that when we go into this, we would like to actually make sure that whatever work we have done, it has a longevity behind it. We do not want to see our work gone to waste, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So I think it was more of making sure that our work we have done would have impacted Bro Donuts in a way or another as well. Mm-hmm. And for close?
Yeah, so following similar to the continue question, obviously the two similar elements, but obviously for the close we identified the question of how can this learning be used elsewhere. So obviously on the continue section, obviously it's about eradicating the change, so obviously it's an important question to ask, but I also think on the close section, how can this learning be used elsewhere, because we feel that if we do use qualitative measures or even quantitative measures, if we were going to say a quantitative, so the amount of quantity we post, how is that going to be kept up after we leave? And the same with qualitative, if we're making really good posts, how is that going to then be used for them? So everything that we're telling them and we're teaching them, how can this then be used after the project for the client to do by themselves? So we thought it was a very important question to ask off the basis of that. So obviously we identified questions, there was 21 in total, with the highest section being create and the lowest section being changed, but we did also add in 2 extra questions just in case, because we thought the client might ask and might tell us information throughout the process. So obviously these questions are important because we all came up with our own ideas and questions to ask the client, and they all pretty much, with the 2 extra ones, make it 3/4 for each question. So we had a good range of questions to ask the client.
So as you can see, the picture over there is the first picture we have took as a team after the meeting with Emmy, which is our client for Bro Donuts. If you could click over at the brief back, that's where you are able to see more information of the questions that were answered and some questions that were not, points that we took. And I'll pass it on to anyone who is talking about the SMART goals as well.
So one of the SMART goals we determined with Emmy was to increase the reach by 12% and also increase volunteers by 8, which obviously means we've gone for the more quantitative approach on this one, but we also were assigned a qualitative goal, which was to improve the positive comments by the end of week 8. I'm now going to pass it along to Callum now, who's going to talk about some notes from the meeting.
Yeah, so our client didn't answer our questions directly, but we were able to overcome this by sort of adapting to the changes, and we were able to get most of the information we required.
So for code reflective model, we will not dwell into the specific points for every single one, as you could pause at the video to read more. But I'll be just sharing the concrete experience from my side, and then I'll pass it on to whoever's next on the reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, as well as the active experimentation. So I think one thing that the biggest takeaway from the concrete experience is that I think we all went into meet Emmy with a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
We did not know what was going on, and when we went in, I think we were all level-headed in the sense that we agreed on the SMART goals, which is the 12% and 8 volunteers. I mean, if there wasn't a point where we were arguing, and I think we did it quite diplomatically.
Yeah.
Yeah?
100%.
Yeah, so for reflection.
I mean, I can go and dive into reflection. So we achieved at least 80% of questions answered without relying on 21 prepared questions. Prior research enabled, I guess you could say, anticipation of client concerns and meaningful discussions. An improvement point, we handled unexpected challenges calmly rather than offering immediate temporary solutions, because that temporary solutions aren't going to really be any help to us. Yeah. Analysing the underlying root causes for more sustainable problem solving, that in the long term, honestly, is going to be doing far more favours than just temporary stuff.
Yeah.
Passing to abstract conceptualisation.
Yeah, for me, looking at the abstract conceptualisation, the most important takeaway for me was the fact that we all thought critically and we remained composed under pressure to ensure the best responses. And what I mean by that is when we were looking for the SMART goals and she wasn't quite giving us what we wanted in terms of an answer, we quickly thought under pressure and decided to come up with a goal that worked for us and worked for her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And moving on now to Colin for the active experimentation.
Yeah, so obviously me and Callum went to one of the meetings that Borough Donuts hosts, and obviously all of us have met the client. So we obviously through active experimentation identified that face-to-face meetings with the client are more effective than just online interactions. Obviously it gives you an opportunity for more clear communication and you can speak more directly in person.
So what is Borough Donuts all about? Borough Donut is a community interest enterprise who aim to build a thriving community through collaborative experiences. They hold things such as events like the Edible Forest Gardens and also meetings, which as we touched on, Callum and Colin went to one earlier. So do you want to talk a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, so obviously through the meeting we understood more about the company, so we knew briefly what they'd done, but obviously a more in-depth information to what the current projects are. So stuff like we found out about the Edible Forest Garden.
We did.
And there's stuff that we touch on further, more like the connections they've got with companies, so like the 13 groups, stuff like that, where they can really help out Borough Donuts in the community. And we used a theory called Keegan's Global Strategies. I'll pass on to Eugene to explain that more further.
So I think you missed out also one point that you brought it up on after the meeting was the merchandise, remember?
That's true.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into more depth about that? Callum?
So with the merchandising, they were on about reusable bags and effectively sewing classes on how to make them. I, to an extent, thought that was a good idea, being honest.
100%.
And so with that being said, so where we look at Borough Donuts having like Edible Forest Garden, 13 housing group, or even merchandise right now, and if we look at how we apply with Keegan, which you have the communications, because we did a research of how they were in terms of social media. They haven't been communicating for the longest time, and as well as the product, which is the merchandise. I think that this is where they really have to do the dual adaptations, and that's where Borough Donuts fall under. I think we all agree on that, isn't it?
100%.
Yep. So this is like just an illustration where we constantly look at this so that we remind ourselves that this is what Boro Donuts is all about. We don't drift away from saying that, oh, this source A tells me this compared to source B, because this is the information that we all agreed on,
Yeah.
and we kind of illustrated in that sense.
Yeah, so if you'd like to pause the video, you can look at that in more detail. So obviously we completed a SWOT analysis of what they're currently doing on social media. If I'd like to pass over to the researcher and the content writer Callum
Yeah.
and Ben,
Yeah.
as they
So-
looked at this in more detail.
Yeah, so for strengths, as we can see, Boro Donut has a well-designed website. I think it clearly presents its mission as well as its specific aims and objectives. I think we can all agree on that. It also includes the story of the company and detailing how it was founded.
Yeah.
They do various events, such as fundraisers, organise events, volunteering activities, and lastly, it provides companies registration number, which is excellent.
Yeah. And for the weaknesses, we just noticed that the social media content didn't seem to be following the current trends, which was limiting its engagement a lot. So an opportunity we thought of through this was they can capture the market by using more AI tools, which could lead to more demographics getting involved. And lastly, the threat obviously with this is they are not currently equipped with the current AI trends, which could prove to be an issue as they are not using the equipment advantage to their demographic and target audience.
Yeah, and so we also completed a SWOT analysis as a team of the actual company itself. So we'll all have an input, but for me, we all found that the strengths for obviously the community based, they're a community interest company, and because they're a community interest company, they then have a social impact. So they try and improve the community, and obviously they've got local knowledge of the local area, which is being Middlesbrough. And if I'd like to pass over to Ben, we'll go into the weaknesses.
Yeah, so witness servers, they're very dependent on volunteers, and actually in the meeting she was saying that sometimes they have people who will volunteer and then on the day they just won't show up, will they?
Yeah.
Obviously limited resources as well with no budget. Sometimes they feel like they're taking on too many projects and their donation page didn't work, which we discussed earlier.
Yep.
Now I'm going to pass on to Callum and
Yeah.
mention the opportunities.
So I think for the opportunities is local partnerships, someone who are on the same level as them who can help them, such as maybe example 13 or something
Yeah.
like that. Community support in vectors, and especially an expansion opportunities to more local towns/areas. Get the people involved and get them to support you by cleaning.
Yeah.
And lastly, threats.
Yeah, so I think for threats, if you could see as what you said earlier, which is the volunteer turn up, it's essentially, put it that way, Boro weather is not the nicest as well.
Yeah.
So, if you sign up for, like, on a Sunday to to clean up the edible forest garden, and the next thing you know it's pouring, you'll be like, I'd be better off on bed. So, I think when we say about volunteer turn up, it's not really like the human factor, but it's more the nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like the public perception, because the whole idea of the Instagram page or like social media is not constantly active. If we were talking about that earlier, so I think that's a very good way that they would have that kind of threats being perceived from them, and as well as the technological barriers which you guys mentioned about AI, they're not equipped with that stuff as well.
Yeah. So moving on to the PESTO analysis. So PESTO analysis is split up into 6 points. So starting off with political. So obviously Boro Donut as a company in the UK need to follow UK policies and environmental policies within the UK. But obviously they've done this well by having the edible forest garden, which is obviously good for the environment. But obviously also in political, they've also engaged with local political leaders like Chris Cook in Middlesbrough to try and get more help on the social media point of view, and maybe try and bring more politicians into the idea of the donut economics. And an economic factor obviously is inflation. As we're all going through inflation at the moment, the cost of goods increase, and through that obviously they could run into the problems, because obviously the increase in expenses through the company, and obviously as we've identified before, they don't have that much money in the company, so it could be a real struggle for them in the future if they don't try and address this. And obviously onto the third point from me, from social. So obviously customers nowadays, as it says, Forbes have said in 2023 that 68% of customers surveyed, a part of their survey, would say that they would pay for an eco-friendly product, over a non-eco-friendly product, which really works in Borough Donuts' favour. Would everyone
yeah,
agree?
that's
Yeah.
great.
I think the
Sure what
merchandise
they're
is
trying to
that's
make.
where you were mentioning, like the merchandise is the
Yeah.
good shop where if you do the workshop and then obviously you're not going to take them home, put them out on Instagram,
Exactly.
sell them
Yeah.
out.
Exactly. So that falls under the social element for Borough Donuts really amazingly.
Yep.
So passing on to Eugene, who'll go into the technological part of it.
Yeah, so for technological, I'll not dwell into like the specific words, but at the same time, if you could see, which they say that the data-driven strategies will actually increase competitive advantages of the for the industry. I know that Borough Donuts, I think it's not, pardon my language, pardon me by saying but I think we would say that Borough Donuts as a company, they don't really have much competitors in terms of like I want volunteers in this specific area. But if they could use the data that what they have and then move on with using AI tools to say this is the target audience we want, don't you think that will significantly impact?
100%.
Like even though here they say that it's 5 to 6% by D Button and D Court, but at the end of the day, I think Borough is just a small town itself where you could have good numbers as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yep. So for legal, Ben, would you like to expand further as well?
Yeah, so the UK and EU have strict data protection laws to protect, obviously, their clients' data online. So they've got the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, which basically means any information that a client gives, it's really important to keep that within your company and make sure it doesn't go out to anyone who shouldn't have it. So for example, when they're on their website, if they sign up to something on their website, then it needs to stay within their company and not expand anywhere else. And Callum, do you want to touch up on the last one, environmental?
Well, look, the European Environmental Agency mentions that 85% of marine litter is plastic. Like, that's a very big problem. You know, this eventually impacts humans. It'll affect their health through the food, or through the food chain from microplastics. That's clearly due to the mismanagement of plastic waste and a low capacity for management plastic waste. The European Commission has a strategy to decrease the amount of plastic waste by setting rules around plastic packaging, using and increasing the demand for, and to be fair, recycling plastic.
Yeah.
So as a researcher, I was tasked with finding the target audience, and what I found from the British Heart Foundation survey was the Gen Z are the most likely age group to volunteer, from 16 to 24-year-olds, with flexibility being the key. 37% said they would be more likely to volunteer if hours were flexible. And supporting this from the National Lottery Community Fund, they found that young people and ethnic minorities are most likely to volunteer in local communities. But as a other view, they found older volunteers prioritise environmental causes, which actually relates more to Borough Donut itself. So looking at now, because I was born in Germany, Emmy said it would be a good idea to look at a donut city from Germany, and I decided to look at Berlin, which I'm very glad I did actually, because I found something very interesting there. What they did, they held something called Building Bridges, where they set up a workshop just in the public across a bridge where people would just come in and volunteer themselves because they would found it interesting. So they got involved and they learnt more about the donut economy. And what this actually led to is more people participating in a clean-up of the surrounding area. And we also looked at another one, Amsterdam. And what Amsterdam did was they created a tool for other donut cities around the world where they could look at to get inspiration of what they should do in their city. And Callum, do you want to talk about what you took away from this as your...
Yeah, so the Amsterdam City Donut is now used as a tool for transformative action, including content such as creating a thriving city portrait, What would it mean for the people of Amsterdam to thrive? What would it mean for Amsterdam to thrive in its natural habitat? What would it mean for Amsterdam to respect the health of the whole planet? And what would it mean for Amsterdam to respect the well-being of people worldwide? I mean, I guess in summary, they introduced donut thinking into the policy making, where they create an Amsterdam City donut portrait, which acted as a starting point for turning donut economics into the 21st century for transportation action.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I feel like when we were speaking to our client, there was a big emphasis on what other cities were doing, and obviously, if you look at the size of Amsterdam and Berlin, it's much bigger than Middlesbrough, but it doesn't mean that Middlesbrough can't do as much. And obviously, these two cities are leading examples, and our client would like to know how to become that. So
how to bridge the gap. From
how to
borough
bridge
to
the gap.
these.
Yeah, so obviously these models are amazing to show to the client, and the clients were happy to see these, because this is what they would like to know, so they can transform their way of doing it as well.
Yeah.
And moving on to the business model canvas, so this is a canvas that we done for Borough Donuts. So obviously we identified the key partners from when we went to the meeting with Borough Donuts. Obviously volunteers is their key partners, because without volunteers it wouldn't work, but also, as been mentioned before, 13 Housing Group really help out, and will be mentioned soon as well. The National Lottery and Local Motion. Local Motion being obviously a local company which helps out in similar activities as Borough Donut. And passing on to Ben.
Yeah, so we looked at the key activities and the actions they require for becoming profitable. And as we said earlier about the merchandise they're making through projects, they're looking to sell that to make money. Potentially asking for small donations, which they're doing so on their website, and they potentially contribute their own earnings from their jobs. And lastly, they're looking at making their own fruit garden to sell more products. Moving on to key resources, Callum will go through this one.
Key resources is the demand to keep the business running. 13 housing, street cleaner waste, management items, edible forest, garden land, all that type of stuff. I mean, value proposition, you'll probably know that.
So I think with value proposition, we look at the community of interest, like they are the community interest company. So they aim to actually engage the community to say, come on, let's volunteer, do something for Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they are able to then say that, I have done something for Borough.
Yeah.
And I mean, for pain relievers, if you look at it, that is really the company is trying to help the local community in terms of where they are at the current state and where they want to move forward from there, to make sure that that environment that where they are staying or residing will be a better place for them.
100%. So looking at the customer relationships, obviously they need repetitive volunteers that is their customers, and passing over to Callum.
Yeah. Their channels are communication, channels of clients, websites, Instagram, WhatsApp, channels through Facebook groups, all that type of stuff. I mean, do you know anything about customer segments?
Yeah, so we're looking at the target users who are going to look be volunteers, sponsors, companies that have the same mission, enthusiasts, people who enjoy the same hobbies, students and schools. Now, passing on to Eugene, we'll look at the core structure.
Yeah, so for core structure, I think essentially we do not have the access of the finance of Borough Donuts. I think that would be a bit out of our depth. So I think it's not applicable for a community interest group, because even whatever money they earn has to be reinvested back into the community itself. And as for the revenue streams, I think we were talking about it a lot, which is like donations, sponsors, and merchandise. I think for the past half an hour we have spoke, it's a lot about merchandise, donations, sponsors. And I think one thing that we all have to realize, that we also could look into grants for the government the government as well.
100%.
Or even when you hold events or workshop, maybe let's charge £2 for a ticket to try to learn something.
Yeah.
So I'll be also explaining a bit of Entrecom before I pass it over to my team members. So earlier when we talk about when I was talking about the business model Canva, so financial and economy literacy is not applicable for the Entrecom. That's why it's highlighted yellow in color. And I'll then talk about spotting opportunities, where we actually realized that the last post, I think Ben, you remember we were our jaw dropped 6th November 2022. Yeah, it was the last post, and we are at 2025, so it's close to 3 years from the last time they post, and that was where we kind of realized that why not, let's change up the whole Instagram and see what we could go from there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll be going into a bit of detail of how I used it as the team leader and the graphic designer, but obviously how we all used it as well. So obviously Adobe Express was a tool we all used. As a graphic designer, obviously I went into a lot of detail about it, and that's where probably my best expertise is. But there was obviously other apps as well which have been used. Like obviously this presentation's on PowerPoint, so you have to have good creativity skills on PowerPoint as well. But obviously going into that, mobilising resources, I felt like we obviously, similar to creativity, we use the apps for the presentation and for the actual social media post itself, but the actual mobilising of resources wasn't too difficult, because we were all, I would say, we're all quite good at all the mobilising resources. Obviously mobilising others. As a team leader, you need to make sure that everyone's working together, and that we're all on the same page. And passing over to Ben, or to Callum.
Yeah. So planning and management. We scheduled our posts. Kept time management on everything. We made Microsoft lists to make sure everyone was up to date. We made social media posts, as well as kept on time and make sure everyone chipped in. Coping with uncertainty, ambiguity and risk. In a team, we produced issues with the group, with the client, to sort this in a method by finding the best idea and alternative. And then lastly, for me, working with others. We worked as a team to get tasks done. We all done our bit, and we all kept an eye on each other. What about you?
Yeah, so I think two that link really well on this for us as a group is learning through experience and motivation and perseverance. Because remember at the start we were told with our first post not too professional, but we took that as a responsibility to make our post better over time, which gave us motivation. And now we talk about the learning through experience. As we were going on, we were creating our social media posts, our analytics just went up and up, didn't they?
Yep.
And obviously that came with being hands-on with the client.
Yeah, so this is a pie chart of what we think as a team our skills are for Entrecom. As we've all explained, we're pretty much all even, so elements where people are not as good at, other people pick up. So we said as a team pretty much we're all even, but we've done one individually as well. So passing on to Eugene.
Yeah, so I think for myself, as a floater, of course, I will be constantly tapping on the three of the team members to see if they do need any help. And this is where I would say that I fall short in terms of ethical and sustainable thinking, because essentially as a content the graphic designer, I have to be helping you, because with the amount of graphics that we were creating, I think you were overwhelmed. Then for Ben as well, when you're doing research, words were like throwing at your face, and I know that you will need my help in terms of digressing. So it's that those elements that I realized that I did not have the ethical and sustainable thinking, which falls short in comparison to like spotting opportunities or creativity, which I think I have demonstrated quite fairly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also feel like I use spotting opportunities a lot. With me being the researcher, I had a look at the target audience research and also the other donor cities and how we could bridge the gap between them two. But something I didn't use as much was the vision, because I wasn't involved in too much of the booking side, where Callum, you booked this podcast room, didn't you, that we could use, and I wasn't involved with that too much. So now we're going to be moving on to how Callum...
Yeah, so I think mine was vision, what I'd done quite well on, and all of us as a team as a whole. I seen how well all of us can do. I wanted us to do our absolute best. Everyone pushed each other to the absolute limit. I'd say one of my downsides were maybe just a bit of creativity towards the end. Just had a few hiccups, but other than that.
Yeah, it's obviously similar to everyone really. It's my pie chart is, pretty much strong. There's maybe one or two weaknesses, so stuff like mobilising resources, as I've mentioned before. We didn't really need to mobilise that many resources because we all knew how to use the softwares, and we all knew what our roles were in using the softwares. So stuff like that, I've put it as the lowest just for the simple fact is we didn't spend too much time actually doing it. And I would say probably motiverance and perseverance were probably the other lowest one throughout this full time, just because getting the motivation to do the effort and the work we've done was very hard finding, but we got there in the end, I think, as a team, and I feel like we've done very good on this as a whole.
Yeah.
So just looking at the 15 aspects of everyday life now, there was only 3 that we didn't use. This was spatial, physical and organic. But as a group, what I wanted to say that we definitely use the most is ethical and pistic, because if we look at ethical, it actually relates to the Greek word agape, which means self-giving love that involves sacrifice and works itself out in everyday life.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as we all know, we made lots of sacrifices when
Definitely.
Emmy made us work on when we maybe shouldn't have been working. We stayed back most Wednesdays to do more work, didn't we?
Yeah.
And even coming in today to do more work. And it actually benefited us a lot because
Because we put the effort in
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. and we became much closer as a group, I feel, which helped us throughout the project.
Yeah.
And also just touches up on pistic there, our faith and commitment is just touched on that as well.
Yeah.
So now we'll be looking at everybody individually, and I think we'll be starting with Eugene.
Starting with Eugene.
Yeah. So I think for myself, everything is pretty much well balanced, except for the fact that in terms of my economic, essentially like when I was looking in terms of the whole picture of Borough Donuts, I was struggling in that aspect, and I was like, boys, help me out. Like, what should I do? And I think this is where I think we all come together, and it's like you give your input, Ben, you give yours. And also Conlon, I think we have so many midnight calls like, come on, explain this to me right now.
100%.
Yeah.
Ben? Yeah, I also agree that we didn't implement the economic side of it very much, mostly because there was no budget to be used.
Yeah.
So the resources were very limited in what we could do. But I think we implemented the social side of it a lot. We had plenty of meetings, both with each other and with Emmy, and also with Barbara right at the end when we did our final presentation. And now we'll be looking at columns.
Yeah, I think my everyday, my 15 aspects would, I think definitely my ethical one, because obviously as a small business I sort of understand, that they want to make everywhere a lot better. I also know like the economic is a very strong point for me personally. I understood the budget and other aspects such as that. And then finally, analytical, because I also understood, based on how much of the budget they have, I had to sort of pull it piece by piece.
Oops.
There you go.
Sorry for the technical error.
Passed on, Colin.
Yeah, so for me, I would say it's pretty much everything's even, bar from economics, so following on the same trend as Eugene and Ben. We didn't really need to use it, but I'd say every other element is pretty much the same when it comes to the amount of usage and how we implemented it. And passing on to Eugene, who'll go into more detail about the Microsoft lists.
Yeah, so we talk about a lot about Ontricom, like mobilizing resources, and like even when we come about of like the faith and commitment, which is from the 15 aspects. I kind of know that there's a thing called Microsoft List, and this is where we actually, I think, we align ourselves, which we mobilize resources using Microsoft List. It was given to us as a student in Teesside. At the same time, making sure that we all keep the faith and commitment. I think we do apply them diligently in both on Tricom and 15 aspects of life in terms of this. And if you could see, literally, I was telling the team leader, which is Colin as well, like we can't have any more than one outstanding task which is lacking behind. So even when there was things which like when Callum was lacking behind of, we constantly check on him. It's like, Callum, are you alright? Ben, are you alright? You know, it's only fair because that's the case, we were working as a team together, making sure that no one is falling behind, and we make sure that we held each other's hands and said, let's go.
Yeah, it's an amazing tool for time management, I would say, as well.
Yeah.
Just making sure, and accountability, just making sure everyone is on the same page, as we mentioned before.
Yep.
Yeah.
But now going on to the weekly planning, this is just a brief showcase of the post we've done. If you'd like to pause the video now, you can read it in more depth. But there's loads of different posts in there. We were tasked with making 4 posts a week for 5 weeks. So we brought this down into every person. We won't go into detail about every video. If you want to, or video or image, if you want to obviously find them out, they'll be at the bottom of the document, or they'll obviously be on social media. But there's a loads of different ways. So obviously some we only post on Instagram, some we only put on Facebook. Some of them were videos, some of them were Instagram stories. So there was loads of different ways we tried to get Borough Donuts more interactions and more reach, which was the goal of the full project. So more people can see it. So it's different ways of putting social media posts out.
So this is one of the theories that we learned from the reading one of the resources that was tasked to us in school, which is called the three-legged stool theory. So essentially, I think the technical skills, if you could see over down there, you have consultant, client, and consumer. So essentially, I think it's quite self-explanatory in that sense where I think as a consultant, if we are on a certain height, our client has to be on the same page, because if they are backing us up, the consumer would then automatically be on the same page,
exactly.
in terms of making sure that we are uneven, especially if one is missing. Let's put it that way: if the client, if there's no client, it's just consultants and consumer. What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
If there's no consumer,
exactly,
what are you doing as well? So essentially, it's just like a stool where you need to have a balance, and I think that essentially, we would then show you an example of why there's a period where we were doing our work. You will see that client falls short, and I think we did not show it up actually in terms of our data analytics, but what we found that was where we were having our traction, it was quite high, but when the client decided let's go on the right, BECC is doing the right thing,
exactly,
I'll go on, it fell short.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is the one. So if you could see over down there, essentially we kind of make it more interactive in the sense of different colors, using the blue and green, which and our client was okay with. But after that, she did not even consult us and said, can I post this? And if you could see, there's 2 identical posts.
Yeah, exactly.
And truth to be told, there wasn't any likes at all.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, what we'd been doing, and we'll go into more detail afterwards, was making sure that the posts through obviously Callum and Ben, making sure the posts were targeted to the right people. And as you can see, the top left post and where the arrow is, and there's one next to the blue one at the bottom, they were posts done by us. So you can see when you look at the analytics, you can see the traction is totally different, because we've done targeted descriptions and targeted hashtags where their descriptions weren't good if there was a description and there wasn't any hashtags. So you could see this is the application of three-legged stool, because that's where the client was pulling down, and that's where it was starting to show if they kept doing this, our results weren't going to be as good.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I mean, if you remember, I was talking about this earlier with the Pesto Technological. We use AI tools to help us to make sure that we are equipped with the right knowledge and to know that this is the primary information that will increase our reach. Whereas when we do the SWOT analysis, they were not equipped with the AI portion, and that's where they fall short.
Yeah.
Don't we all agree?
Yeah.
Yes,
100%.
definitely.
So moving on, so obviously off the back of this, you can then see, like we've just been speaking about, from our point of view, the posts we done were really much better than what was expected. So as you can see, we needed 12%, and if you look at the reach there, it was 12.1. So it wasn't drastically, but it was still better. And on the Instagram, and obviously stuff like interactions, links, clicks were much higher because we try to make the post interactive. So I'll pass on to Eugene and Callum, who will then go on into more detail about the S-curve tool.
Yeah, so for the S-curve tool, we could actually apply it in regards to volunteers or the reach that we're going for. So I think there's a typo with the volunteer recruitment. It's supposed to be for the reach itself. I think we were confused at that point, so apologies. But if we ignore that portion and so go by the reach, I think what we did was at the initial phase, I think we all agree that before we even start posting anything with Boro Donuts, we should inform them that there is going to be a change in how the outlooks of Boro Donuts Instagram is going to be.
Yeah.
And it was slowly from there, we kind of attract the right target audience, which you have found, which I think it was very useful, and that caused that spike up. And then that's where Callum will explain about the plateau phase as well.
I mean, as rapid growth, the next one would be rapid growth phase. As engagement improves, momentum builds, so leading to faster growth on Instagram. So you're going to see all these followers going up and up and up gradually. And but as well as that, the plateau phase growth will eventually slow as we near our target, and focus on sustaining engagement through, I guess you could say, retention strategies, and analyse data to find new ways to maintain or, I guess, regenerate growth, which is just rapid things.
So how did we apply these theories? So obviously, as you can see before, as I've went into detail, obviously there was no consistency in the theme of posts. As you can see up there wasn't an image on the link, and the hashtags were okay, but the actual description of the post wasn't very good. So this was before we came in, and again before, some of the posts did not even have a caption. So obviously this is where we've done our research, and we've came in, and we've, as you can see, this is a range of different graphics we've made. So as you can see already, they're more visualising. Okay, so if you look at the three-legged stool, we were making sure that we were consulting our client to make sure the information was right and that they liked the post that we were doing. As you can see, the post's done a lot better than what we expected. So it just shows the importance of these tools. So stuff like the three-legged stool, we need to make sure that us and our clients are on the same level as we've been doing through these social media posts, and that will always lead back to obviously the consumer, who will then see the benefits. And going into detail about the social media, so obviously through the Entrecomp element, we use ideas and opportunities. So obviously the posts encourage people into new concepts like donut economics. Resources, the group connects people through meetings, social media, shared tools, as we've already mentioned, and into action. So obviously community cleanups, workshops, which is actually a real life experience for people. And if Ben would like to add to the three-legged stool.
Yeah, just looking at the three-legged stool now. So from the economic, there was the donut economics post, which introduced sustainable and economical thinking. And then we had the social post, which was more about the volunteers, trying to drive more volunteers and group activities. And then lastly, the environmental, which was the garden projects and the clean-up events, such as the edible forest garden. And then, so looking at our team review, this was up to week 7. We had a few 9s in here, but this is because we had some differences, such as I had football, we had work, you got an injury, didn't you? So that correlated to that. But then if you actually look into week 9, which is by the end of it, we've seen a lot of improvement there because we sorted all that out and we put our effort into this.
So when we were looking into drafting the whole client's final presentation for it, I think what Callum actually told me was actually, could we devise like a roadmap in terms of
Yeah.
how it's going to be like, because we can't be just saying this is the proposal, there you go, we're done for. But it's more of as you could see the diagram that we have used AI to actually generate, which all credits to the AI in the reference that you could see, is that we actually need to come up with what's like the client's needs. We need to re-emphasize, because we kind of learned on quite last minute that Emmy wasn't going to be there, it's going to be
Yeah.
Barbara. So we have to re-emphasize that, followed by actually showing them what we have achieved.
Yeah.
And then after that, like the proposals at the end of which is how you can continue sustainable growth in for Bro Donuts as well.
There we can see our pictures from the presentation. If you want to have a look at that, it's just on the link.
Yep, so we done a team reflection after the week 10 presentation. So obviously an overview of what happened. So the director that we kept in touch with didn't actually come to the meeting, it was someone else. But I think despite that, I feel like we went into the presentation confidently. We had practice runs through it, and I think through the SMART goals we had and the actual outcomes of the stuff that we'd done, we were very confident going in, knowing that we were going to do well here. So obviously, pass over to Ben about the feelings.
Yeah, obviously when we first found out that Emmy wasn't coming, we were disappointed, weren't we? Because
Yeah.
we'd never met Barbara before, so
Yeah.
we didn't really know what to expect. But once we got going, for myself, definitely I felt a lot more confident. And did you all feel the
Yeah,
same?
I felt
100%.
confident.
Yeah, because we put the work and we knew exactly what we were talking about, which really helped us. And just for the evaluation, whether it was good or bad, we actually found that it went really good, because when we were doing our practices of the presentation, they all went well. But we felt on our final one, that was almost the best one, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in all fairness, I think we are the only group that done twice, like practicing
Yeah,
Yeah.
very true.
Dr.
Yeah.
Bemi as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you, Callum, do you want to highlight maybe the negatives that we had?
I mean, I guess the director's absence sort of struck us all a bit. But again, all we could do is improve that and overcome that. We did sort of underperform on volunteer engagement, which was one of our objectives. But again, hopefully we have overcome that and have hopefully gave them
Yeah.
enough volunteers.
Yeah.
And you proposed them with a good idea, didn't you, of how to improve the
yeah.
volunteers?
Yeah, like the volunteer academy, which is
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
sustainable
Which
one.
I think you got that from the Berlin one a little bit, took some
Ah, yeah.
inspiration from
Yeah,
that a little
there we
bit.
go, yeah. So yeah, for the analysis portion, I think our preparation, which is we constantly making sure that we kind of be confident, and I think it really also boils down like when we kind of dress up well for the occasion. I think that really puts up like, okay, we became more confident in the way we speak, rather
Yeah,
than
definitely.
coming into like with joggers and stuff, and then we were like, okay, Barbara is like, what's the kind of person. I think we set off like a very good impression.
Yeah.
And also that we kind of when we are looking at the overview, we did apologize to Barbara. It's like, sorry, we did not reach the volunteer engagement, which was one of our SMART goals, but we did propose not just one, actually two ideas, proposals to say
Yeah.
like, it's more like how we learn from other modules, like A/B testing. You could try this one. If it doesn't work, go on
Yeah,
another
yeah,
one.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah.
And moving on to conclusion.
Yeah, so what else could we have done? So obviously we could have prepared better for the unexpected changes, like the absences, but obviously I feel like as a group, obviously there's been illness in the group, there's been injuries, people have been busy. I would still say as a conclusion of the full module, but also I would say more specifically the presentation, I would feel like the conclusion is we've done really well, but I feel like preparation wise we've done what we could. Maybe looking back we could have maybe done more goals at it, maybe try and smooth it out a bit more, but as a whole I would say that we still done really, really well. And yeah, it's obviously an action plan for after that. I'll pass on to Ben.
I think something that benefited us a lot was the assigning the roles that we did. So I think if we were going to do this project again, definitely start with that because that was really good for us.
Yeah.
Something we can maybe do differently was set micro goals within maybe the weeks for a regular check-in the track. I know obviously we had the Microsoft list, but if you had a way of checking in with that as well.
Yeah, 100%.
And then maybe just plan for potential absences because Emmy wasn't there and we had Barbara instead. It's just something to take into consideration for next time.
Yep.
So now my personal reflection of the final presentation that we did was, so obviously I took part in a group presentation with these, the BECC, and we highlighted our findings and proposals to Borough Donut. And we basically just said how they can improve the sustainability and longevity. So going in this presentation I was very nervous because I don't like, as we discussed, I don't like doing public speaking. But as I got into it, I felt a lot more confident, as you said, maybe because I dressed nice. And to be fair, Barbara made me feel very welcome, which really helped. And the fact that we produced high quality work also really helped my confidence. We received really good feedback in the end, and we were even asked if we could consider volunteering.
Yeah, staying on, yeah.
But I think as part of the uni, I don't think that was a possibility. From the experience I've learned that putting the right amount of effort into a project can really help me going forward. So if I'm ever going to do public speaking again, maybe get the right information, get enough of it, and then I can feel confident going into it. So yeah.
Yep. So I'm the only one with Ben that used Gibbs reflective model for this one. So as part of the consultancy for Bro Donuts, I think that we have really done proper research. I think the amount of nights we actually dwell on this and say that, you know, even though we stay back, we realize that time wasn't enough. We had to go through extra learning, which we read the 2 books, which that's how we found about Three-Legged Stool, which we found it very applicable.
Yeah.
And even like the 7 C's, where we gather all the questions in comparison to other teams as well, because I think that was highly relevant to us, and we had that upper hand across the other groups that were doing Bro Donuts as well. Yeah, so I think I really also want to give credit to Barbara, which she really make us feel welcome, as what Ben said. She did not in a sense disappointed for the fact that we did not hit our 8 volunteers, but she was so proud of us with the amount of effort and work we have done. And I think through this experience, I think one thing that I will take away, which is the adaptability, being the floater. I think I would say, in all fairness, it's one of the hardest job to actually sit into your 3 roles as well. But at the same time, I think you guys have given me enough grace to fall short at times and teach me how to be a better team player as well. Yep.
Yeah, so me and Callum used the role reflection model. So obviously, it's very simple. So what we've done, we presented our findings to the client and some of our proposals for the future. Obviously, so through doing our presentations, it was probably the first presentation I'd done in a professional manner in front of an actual live client. So obviously, I learned how to present professionally and how to improve my communication skills, which was one of the skill gaps I had from the start of this module. But despite this, obviously, I feel like the presentation from myself could have maybe been a bit more better, because there was a lot of statistics which I presented to the client, but it wasn't very clear to how this can really help them. So maybe that's what I'll do next time, as well as obviously in a future workplace, stuff like improved communication, professional presentations will always help me to better myself, and passing on to Callum.
Yeah. My reflection was also based on Rolf's reflection model. I think we presented to the client where we were very enthusiastic about presenting, and we were keen to go into a lot of detail as well as to answer any unanswered questions. Throughout our presentation, I feel like I learned a lot about timekeeping skills. I learned more about how to manage tasks on top of work. And in the future, I'm going to use this knowledge into real life and adapt my skills further.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
So this is the personal reflection of the whole module itself. I'll not dwell into it, with time is of the essence. So I'll just quickly share a quick one, is that in a whole, we all, from week 3, we gather the SMART goals, we plan it out. Even though we're week 6, we all come back together, do our work on using Ontricom, 15 aspects, 3-legged stools, S-curve tool. I think we can all hold our head high and say we have done well in terms of understanding the theories, applying the theories, and being the best version of ourselves, especially to the real life clients. And with that, I think this experience would actually cause us to make myself learn to be more emotionally resilient, in that sense where in a setting where we struggle, you guys are there to help me as well.
And just my reflective model of the whole module, I've also used the Gibbs reflective model. So at the start we were tasked with being consultants for Borough Donut, and our very first involvement with Borough Donut was actually meeting Emmy and creating our SMART goals, which included 12% reach and gaining 8 more volunteers. And I felt this meeting was very positive, leaving me excited to get started on the consultancy project. But within the next couple of weeks we recognised that maybe the goals we had set with Emmy were a bit harder than we expected. This is because we didn't get a clear answer from Emmy when we asked about how active their social media page was. She kind of beat around the bush, didn't she, when I asked her, and then we decided to say we'll make a post each every week. But in the end we found out she didn't post before that until 2022.
Yeah.
So from this experience I have found the importance of finding the root problem of the company before setting out goals, and this will help me set more SMART goals, set more clear SMART goals for the future.
Yeah, so within this module, I feel like I want to lead a team in a future workplace. So I feel like being a team leader has really helped me do that. But obviously, for the what element, I led a team to success on social media, and I worked collaboratively with a live client for the first time. So what's obviously from this experience, I learned how to speak professionally with clients, which is similar to the presentation. And obviously it's helped me keep on improving my graphic design and creativity skills. So now what would be, so from this experience, I believe that I wouldn't be ready yet to become a consultant, because I feel like that would be much further down the line for me. But I've enjoyed the experience and I've enjoyed being a team leader. And pass over to Callum.
Yeah, so I mean, reflecting on what happened when we met our consultant and discussed what the business was, this was Borough Donut, and they talked about what they wanted, such as better posts and more views. We made a group in our WhatsApp with our client where we discussed weekly activities and progress updates to make sure everyone knew what they were doing. When we got into work on presenting and researching, as well as posting weekly posts for the client, and overall presented the presentation and what we are now currently getting ready for the final steps.
And on the screen is just a link of our references. You can look through that when you receive the document. And that's everything, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There we go. Just click it.